control exactly what people think, and that is our job.
Yeah.
Remember, it's illegal to possess these stolen documents. It's different for the media.
I was wondering who did that. Thanks.
Ain't nothing to it. A baby could do it.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
I'm a human being, god damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
We make this judgment affirmatively. It will be an entire nation.
All right, guys, what's up? Hey, I have Rex Charming from Suburban Homestead Outfitters. How are you? How are you?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Good. It's glad to know that you're not a chicken, right? Just letting you know,
right.
He's a real person.
I'm a real person. That is, that's just my avatar.
Yeah, he's just having his anonymity, or
Which, and I'm happy you asked me about that, which is kind of cool. Respecting the whole anonymity thing. But I'm not on my channel. There's plenty of there's videos out there with me in the video on the channel. I just not all the time. I have I guess a voice for radio. Not necessarily. I don't think about myself when I film videos or when I do things, because I'm usually trying to show something. So it's just I never really think about just having myself in the video much, or my my face.
So. Yeah. Okay, I guess so. I just wanted to make sure, because there's some people that they don't want their real name or they don't want their face. So I want to respect that. My name is out there. Like, it's too late for me to be anonymous, but
it's really hard to nowadays anyway, right? I mean, meaning I don't necessarily use my real name or my face all the time, but by the same token, if anyone wants to, they can find out. there's no way to hide.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. It's harder. So what got you started with this with gardening? Is it a family tradition? Did you start when you were younger? I'm always curious to interest. I'm always curious.
Well, I'm about 50 years old, meaning I'll be 50. I'll be 50 in December. So I grew up in an environment to where my father was a country boy, my mother was a city girl. So there was always some form of outdoorsmanship, in my upbringing, from Boy Scouts and there were periods of times where as a family we did have a garden, but it was usually a phase kind of thing, meaning my mom went through a gardening phase a few times, and that would happen. It really didn't kick off for me really heavy until probably the past 15 years, and it was prompted primarily by health concerns, and the more I found out about food. Meaning once somebody has a health concern and they start looking into their food and their diet, then the next thing you know, they start looking into, how their food, is sourced through the store and all of the methods of factory farming. And, you watch a few videos, next thing you know, you're either going to give up meat altogether or you're going to find another way. And there was no way I was going to give up meat. I also grew up a hunter, so there was absolutely no way I was going to give up meat. So the alternative was find other ways. So I kind of started off with chickens and gardening. But, even with the gardening, we started off in our apartment before we ever bought a house, my wife and I. So, it's just primarily from health concerns. I was starting to have health concerns as I got older, and health issues. So I was just really looking for better food.
For me, I kind of found that journey, into a lot of the stuff, because I talk a lot about vaccines on the channel, but as I was on that journey and I realized that that's the reason I have asthma, then I started looking for alternative methods to cure my asthma, and allergies and other stuff that I had, and then it traced it back to food. And then once you figure out the food, then you start getting into like GMO food and non-GMO food and organics and chemicals and where they're grown and where they're sourced. And it's like turmeric. You have to be careful about turmeric because if it's not sourced to the right place, it can have a high amount of lead in it, and just stuff like that. And I'm still going through that right now. And then I was like, oh, vitamin C. Where does vitamin C come from? Oh, they make a lot of vitamin C from rose hips. Okay, so can I grow my own rose hips and make my own vitamin C? Just things like that, right? And you figure out a cheaper way to do it, a faster way to do it, more convenient, because once you start consuming something, and I think it's good because it really makes people realize how connected we are from the earth and how far we have come from it.
Yeah, we're very much disconnected, and that's the other aspect of it is the skill set. There used to be a time where just about everyone was by default had an herbalist in their family. There's what we know as today as grandma's remedies, her way of doing things. And it's just how the generations before us lived. So there is sort of a going back, to that aspect, but it's something that we've lost, and it didn't take long to lose it. Several generations of living in the city, and it's pretty much gone.
Well, Miss Conspiracy, I think there was conspiracy to get us away from that. Even in the instance of herbal remedies, you can trace that back to the Flexner Report, and when the Carnegies and the Rockefellers took over medicine and made the allopathic medicine more predominant. There was actual, plans in place to wipe all of this knowledge out.
That worked hand in hand. I mean, they're the ones who built the hospitals, they built the universities, and they built the cities because they had the factories. And the only way to get people out of their homes in the hills and into the cities was to make sure that you had a place for their children to go, as far as schools were concerned, and that whole thing. And two, offering up the idea of healthcare with the hospitals and things of that nature, which, we've naturally, we're starting to realize now that or at least a lot of people are, that the high density living that we have in the cities is not necessarily the natural state that we should be in as human beings is the most healthy thing for us. And that the split from what we would call allopathic to homeopathic medicine and how it's turned into an industry. I mean, it's literally just an industry to push pharmaceuticals, and that there's a corporate motivation behind most of it, including, people say the military industrial complex, you can just throw pharmaceutical in there. So, you know what I mean? Military industrial pharmaceutical,
Well, it's also tied on with the food and agricultural complex too. Because, when I started looking at this too, I was like, well, dang, you look at GMOs, you look at, the factory farming, you look at all this stuff and how, they basically, it's like they're killing the bacteria in the soil with chemicals, and then they grow this food too that we're supposed to eat, but yet now we have gut issues and we're not getting our microgut biome as balanced as it should be, because a lot of the bacteria that we're supposed to get in the foods that are grown are being killed off by the pesticides.
Well, the same pesticides and herbicides and fungicides are one, you have the companies that sell these things. So like a lot of folks don't understand why GMO exists or what is the purpose behind it, because in this modern world with scientism as a religion, if you will, it's easy for people to think, and it's advertised as, no, they're just making food more nutritious, or they're stacking more, of vitamins and minerals into it. And that sounds all really cool, but it's like, okay, show me that food in the grocery store, because I don't see it. They're really doing,
it's a PR campaign.
Yeah, the reason why they modified the genetic makeup is because if you want to use an herbicide, meaning you want to kill weeds, right? Because you're growing in this factory farm fashion, the row crops and everything, and you want to kill weeds, herbicide just means kill herb, right? Herbicide. So when you want something that will also not kill your plant. So how do you kill weeds but not kill your corn or your main plant? Well, you have to modify that weed so that you have to modify it so that it will accept glyphosate. It will take the poison and not kill it and only kill the other. So the whole
but then you're
purpose
eating that.
exactly. But you know, the whole purpose of the modification is so that you can sell more herbicide, right? So that's why Monsanto, they sell herbicide.
Not more food. Not more food.
Not more. Well, I mean, by default, more food, but not in the way you want it,
Well,
right?
they
Because
own
then they
the
can
seeds,
say,
though. Like
exactly.
Food that they're making, they like don't. The seeds don't reproduce. So I'm like, it's enslavement. It's enslavement because we need food to survive. We need healthy food not only to survive but to have clarity of thought and mental stability. Like if we're not getting proper nutrition, we're not only going to be sick, but we're going to be mentally unstable.
Well, this is another reason why you want to grow or control as much as you can, because there's also a nutritional value that is not found in food. A lot of times it is grown that way because the soil is so deficient in minerals. Like say, for example, I heat my home primarily with wood. All of the ash from my fireplace goes into my garden, right? And that's something that most people would say, I remember my grandma doing that. Or I remember my great-grandmother. Yeah, she'd take the wood ash and throw it in the garden, in the garden beds, you know.
In the compost? In the compost?
No, I basically put mine directly in the beds. You know, everybody kind of does things a little bit differently. But what you're doing is I use my animals and other methods to remineralize my soil. So, as my soil gets depleted, you have systems. Exactly. So you can always tell the difference between a store-bought tomato and one grown in someone's backyard. One is fresh. It didn't sit on a truck. It didn't travel 100 miles. It didn't do anything of that nature, or picked prior to it being ripe so that it could travel.
Putting gas on it so it'll ripen faster.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So, and the taste will be night and day because, you know, my soil, as long as you're tending your own soil, building your soil over years, caring about what you put into the soil, not to say that farmers en masse don't, but the methods that they use in order to make this a viable business, right, which is kind of different, it means that, they're having problems with topsoil, which is why they have to use so many artificial fertilizers and things of that nature, because the natural, you know, it's almost thinking, there's a lot of things like that. You know, for example, what families used to drink the milk of one cow. Now families drink the milk of 1,000 cows, all milked at the same time, mixed together. You know what I mean? So it used to be a cow that was, So, you know, we've gotten away from things like that. So one of the ideas of homesteading in general is to make your home work for you, but also in developing these systems and communities so that you are able to source as much as you can, or as much as you want to, right? It's not necessarily for everyone. But as we're starting to see, you know, the America is headed towards, so homesteading is going to get a lot more popular by necessity. And it's almost as if during the Great Depression, you would see certain things, you saw certain things. During, let's say, World War II with the English, if you really, really want to study some really cool homesteading stuff and how to grow food and, you know, different environments, meaning even, you know, not with a bunch of property and things of that nature. Watch things like Wartime Garden and things of that nature of how the British lived, you know, on that tiny little island during the very tough time of World War II when they were under, you know, well, they were getting stuff from us, but, you know, you kind of get the idea. They didn't have a lot. So how they grew food, how they did things was very important, and there's a lot of skill sets that you can get out of that. So it's really just pushing, or the concept of pushing skills from, there's two kinds of people in this world, those who know how things work and those who don't. So ultimately, not knowing how things work means you're subject to those that do. An example would be, if you don't know how your car works, then you're going to pay me to fix it. It's just the way it works. Now, that necessarily doesn't mean that you have to know how everything works, right? Yeah. But you have a better idea if you're being taken advantage of, or at least a better concept of what's going on the more you understand. Mm-hmm. We have to get back to a day and age in America where we are more of a skills-based people, and we've gotten away from that.
You know, I was just going to go off course a little bit, but add on to what what you were saying. I was thinking about that the other day, and I was thinking about how a lot of like American slaves, when they left, when slavery, you know, when they weren't enslaved anymore, they had a lot of these skills. You know, they knew how to hunt and fish and grow things, and you know, a lot of Black Americans had a lot of these skills, and then it's like they were starting to do great until, you know, until it was intercepted, and they, you know, they start breaking up the family and moving people to cities and stuff.
Well, then we were ultimately made dependents after a certain point. Yeah, there's a gradual walk away from family, as well as, like I said, as we start to go, just people in general, more so towards the city, a lot of these things are lost as far as the skills that we have, including the idea of community. You know, the idea of community has largely gone away because of this. Just in my lifetime, the idea of community has changed drastically. Yeah. So, you know, these are kind of, but, you know, it's all in, I think there at least is, as far as people waking up, my idea of what woke means, I guess, to a degree, is that your lifestyle, for me personally, between what I would call woke and not woke, there was a change in lifestyle. It's kind of hard to be woke and not change your lifestyle. Something had to change, you're right, right? And if it didn't change, then kind of it's like, well, what does that really mean then, right? What does it really mean?
You're just basically repeating and listening to the same stuff that you did before. There are people that kind of wake up or they realize that they've been lied to, but they just kind of still, they don't really, like, yeah, that's a good way to put it, make a change in lifestyle, make a change to really to go down the rabbit hole very deep and research. You know, they'll just repeat talking points like they did before, and I'm like, are they really awake? You know? Or
they may feel paralyzed by it. Like, I'll give you I've come across some people, and like even on, so I don't really go off on my channel much at all about politics or the rabbit hole of conspiracy theory and things of that nature, because while it's really fun for academic study, it doesn't necessarily get me anywhere, right? Because that rabbit hole will just keep going and going and going, and then more information piled on and more. And it's just, the more it is the more it just makes your head spin.
Well, yeah, but granted, you have to get to the point where you know that you're being lied to and that you're being made dependent, and how to become independent.
And exactly, yeah.
Then you get off, you climb up the hole. I'm like, all right, I got to grow a garden. I got to do this. I got to learn mechanics. I got to do whatever.
Well, yeah. At some point, you have to see, well, where do I find my liberty in this world that has so many things, you know, against me, right? There's so many things, systems that are set up against me. Now that I know that they exist, I can spend my time just mapping this, or now that I know that it exists, I can see now, here's where I can get my liberty and break the chain that they have over me. And also understanding that if we are ever, as a group or as a people, able to break that chain, we will need to be self-reliant. Yeah. There will be no self-reliance, or there will be no freedom from that chain collectively if we don't have self-reliance. And it actually comes at an individual level. It's as corny as be the change you want to be. I know that sounds corny, but it has to start there. And what you will find is the more you do these things, your community of people with skills will grow, and you will start to find incredible amounts of liberty yourself, and things will change in your life, and you will start to see that in the community around you that you have chosen, the volunteer community around you that you have chosen. And there is liberty to be found. And you can imagine, it's almost to the effect of the control that they have over us is very much because of how dependent we are upon them. Yeah. We are dependent upon them for food. So I don't care how much or how woke you want to be, if in a just-in-time delivery food system, you can be as woke as you want, but in this just-in-time delivery food system, you are just maybe 3 weeks away from doing what the heck they tell you to do.
Dude,
people talk about their vaccines all day long. Are you going to take a vaccine? I don't know. Are you going to take a vaccine? I'm not sure if I want to take a vaccine. You're going to do what the heck they tell you to do when you're starving. I guarantee it. Because what do you can go, what, 3 days without water? How long can you, 3 weeks without food? You know, we all know the rule of threes, or however you want to look at it. But the reality is that if you don't have the ability to have some form of self-reliance, then morality is often deeply connected to what someone has the ability or, to do. They'll say, well, I don't want to take this job, but I have to, right? Well, the more independence you have, the more you're able to say, you know what, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that I don't have to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, so it's really a big, and food is one of the best ways we can do it because it's one of the deepest necessities, and it's one of the things that will probably hit us first. And it's not just about food. There's water in this. There's the skill set as well. But primarily, the concept is.
So you take that away from anybody, humans, animals, they're gone. They're goners.
Well, every animal on this planet can feed themselves except for one. Every single animal on this planet can take care of themselves. You just walk away, they're good to go, except for one. The human being, a large percentage of us, you just take us somewhere and just drop us in, and we'll starve or succumb to malnutrition or succumb to the elements or anything, because not all of us. Now, granted, 200 years ago, you couldn't make that statement. See, it's been told to us that in America, if we lost power today, millions of people would die. Millions of people. And I'm thinking, well, wow, that's crazy, because 200 years ago, we didn't even have power. So millions of people. If you went to some place, pick your country, right, and or someplace in Sudan, right, and said, all right, we're taking away your power, they laugh at you, right? What power? We don't have power here, or we have rolling blackouts anyway, or whatever, So there is a certain dependence that we have that makes us extremely vulnerable. So when we say woke, that's really why I really, spend as much time as I can pushing that aspect more than I do anything else. And when I say that aspect, the aspect of self-reliance, because even people who may not be 100% on board with the idea of a central or groups of controllers controlling us outside the government, and they may not be ready to take that leap on the the complete red pill or whatever you want to call it avenue. Today, when you have the craziness that went on earlier this year, and what happened in the grocery stores, and able to say that we actually had food rationing in America. What do you think about that? Food rationing in America, right? In 2020, we had food rationing. There are people who may not be on board with all of the red pill stuff, but there's a heck of a lot of people getting more interested in, hey, do I need to grow a garden this year? Do I need to make sure I have some extra food, extra water, toilet paper, for crying out loud? If you remember that, right?
That's so weird, but yeah.
Yeah, but but that's enough to show people at least that there are some issues with our logistical supply chain at bare minimum. Like, even if you can't convince them of a lot of things, you can convince them. Don't you think America can do a better job on how we distribute, our products, to ensure that we don't have situations where we go all Mad Max, So,
well, but did you see that? But there were people that were being told to dump their milk and kill their cattle and stuff. So, to me, that's been just like, how do people think that it's even only about like a virus if people are being told to do that, and the farmers are listening and doing it?
Well, see, and luckily, not all farmers did. Now, yes, there were farmers that killed. There were millions of chickens killed. There were millions of gallons of milk dumped. Also, I'll give you an example. I had an opportunity a few months back, and it was you need to act on this now. But I get a phone call or a message from some people saying, look, we've got some pigs right now that we can't get to the processing. Otherwise, we're going to kill these pigs. But we came up with an idea. You come and you pick up the pig tomorrow between these hours. You know what I mean? And we're selling them for X amount of money. So I was going to be able to get a pig for $100. Let's say a 250-pound pig for $100, which is extremely cheap.
How much do pigs usually cost?
Let's say, for example, I would have easily paid $300 otherwise for the pig.
Oh, damn. So that's a steal.
Yeah, well, I have a pig waiting for me right now that we could butcher probably now, but the processing we can't get in until the first week of December, And I ordered a deep freezer a few months ago, and that's another thing. Like, try ordering a deep freezer. They're very much in short supply. It's hard to get them. They're back ordered. I'm not sure when I'm going to get my deep freezer. Luckily have a neighbor that works for one of the club stores. So he brought me a 7 cubic foot freezer that he got from the store last night because he knows when they come in. So I may get a few of those because I can't fit a whole pig in that. But in either event, you know, it's hard to get a hold of certain things right now, building supplies, freezers, but the food chain aspect of it is, to get back on that, yes, that has been going on. There have been some end arounds, meaning some people are adjusting to get rid of the middleman and understanding that they can go directly to the clientele. And that's a good aspect. Yeah. But yes, when you kill your chickens, and if, let's say they're egg chickens, it takes 6 months before a baby chick lays an egg. So when you do that and you have an issue, then you may have a shortage of eggs for a while, because when you have your next go around of chicks that you want to hatch, it takes 6 months before they're ready to lay an egg. So that can cause prices to be a little crazy until we get that number back. It takes maybe about 2 months to let's say 8 to 12 weeks, depending on the type of meat bird, to raise those birds. So when they raise those birds, they have to kill them. They can't keep them alive because there's no money in that, right? The bird's only designed to be alive for 12 weeks. So, and sold. So when they could not process the bird because the meat processing plant's shutting down, then they're like, well, we got to kill these birds because I'm not paying to store these birds. And frankly, these birds don't store well live. They literally almost look at you at that age and say, kill me. And I hate just because they're bred for that. They have heart attacks and stuff like that as they get older, right? I've never seen one of like a Cornish cross older than a year anyway. So because they're designed to get big fast and have a big, large breast and all of that, they grow large twice as fast as any other chicken. Too. I mean, oh yeah, well, these are reasons why I decided, yeah, I think I'll raise my own chickens. Thank you very much. You know, it's because and like, say for example, I don't really raise meat birds per se. My chickens are primarily for eggs, and it's a different breed of bird that you use for that. However, there have been times when we've hatched chickens in the backyard and we have males, and there's not much to do with the male but eat it, you know. So it's one of those, you know, we keep a few roosters, but we don't need a whole bunch. And you know it's even weirder, because I was talking to this lady that at the garden store I go to, and I love them, they're patriots and stuff. And then she was like, yeah, I raise chickens. But she was like, yeah, man, I think the HOA, she was saying, was trying to tell her how many chickens she could have. And I was like, this is bullshit. Like, how could somebody tell you like how many chickens you could raise on your own property? This is ridiculous. You know, it's not. HOAs are horrible, and I don't understand why people pick another level of government. It's like if they don't have enough government, they say, hey, let's. She regretted it. Yeah. She told me not to do that. She was telling the story. So she was like, yeah, when you don't do that, you know? Yeah. Well, and every municipality is different. So where I live, it is legal, I believe, to have 12 chickens, and you're allowed to have 1 rooster, and that rooster has to be kept in the garage at night or indoors at night. And we've always done that anyway, because roosters, they make a lot of noise. Oh, that's right. They do. But the whole 12 chickens thing, yeah, sure, we have 12 chickens. That's all I'll say about that. But it's like we obviously have more than 12 chickens. But it's not necessarily, you know, our neighbors were our first level of concern. So here's an example is before I ever decided to put chickens here, not that it was dependent upon this, but I did at least go talk to my neighbors, right? I did at least say to, you know, certain people, look, we're gonna raise chickens. It wasn't asking their permission. It was pretty much saying, hey, we're doing this, and maybe you might want some eggs, right? And all of our neighbors were, of course, like, oh yeah, not a problem, you know, not a big deal. But you know, you could have issues like that. There's a lot of things you can do on the stealth. We raise rabbits. You could raise rabbits in a way that nobody ever knew. You could raise them in your garage if you wanted to. You can raise them in your basement if you wanted to. And you could do that in a way that no one ever knows, but just keep in mind, those rabbits will be in cages. That's just the way that that works. You can raise quail, which is another very, very small bird, smaller than chicken. They
Ducks.
lay eggs.
Right?
Ducks, yeah. A lot of ducks require water. So on a suburban lot, it's not as easy. But I've seen people that do it. You know, they get little swimming pools and little kiddie pools and things like that for them just to have some water. But yeah, there's a lot of options that you have in small spaces, specifically when it comes to trying to raise protein or meat, right? So that's really, vegetables is one thing, but when you're trying to raise meat or actual caloric intake with protein, then, you know, a lot of guys, you'll step into the area of different meat animals that you can raise, as well as mushrooms. That's another good option as well. So I grow about, I think about 8 species, if I count them up, of mushroom here on the homestead.
What
mushrooms? Let's see. Right now, I've got summer white growing, which is my first time growing those. Which is an oyster mushroom. I grow golden oyster, pink oyster, blue oyster, shiitakes, lion's mane, king stropharia. No, not portobello. I eat portobello, but I don't grow them. They're a different type of grow substrate and methodology than what I typically use. I may give it a shot at some point, but time-wise, I've kind of fine-tuned some systems now that work pretty well with as far as putting it all together. But if anyone's interested on my channel, I make videos of how I go through the process that I do, how I grow what I grow on my property.
I forgot what mushroom it was, but you did one where you're talking about bugs. And you're harvesting them, but you were putting them in the bucket and there was little bugs on it. You were like, oh, take some salt water and put it on them. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I think, you know, one of the things I'm struggling with, I mean, I'm doing it, but it's really hard. But I know once I start gardening, I'm going to have to get, not be afraid of insects, because it seems like growing stuff goes hand in hand with insects. And I mean, they're part of the ecosystem, so it's not a bad thing. But for me, for somebody that I can do some insects, I'm okay with worms, I'm okay with praying mantises, but they're just other bugs. I'm just I'm not good with roaches. I had this plant that I was digging up. It was an aloe vera plant, and I was like changing the soil, and I guess a roach or something burrowed up under it, and if I can crawl to my arm, I almost
well, you know, I think some of that is, you know, you have to ask, would any of us be afraid of bugs a couple hundred years ago? You know, or is it something that human beings have always had? You know what I mean? I think always been a...
It's psychologically part of that disconnection from nature. It is.
Yeah. See, and I love bugs. I'm a creepy crawl. I love spiders. I love anything.
Spiders are okay.
Spiders
don't bother me. There's just certain bugs that I don't. You know what my thing is too? I don't like being surprised, and I think once I know, and I'm real sensitive to sound. So if something buzzes around my ear, it sounds like a fucking helicopter. Excuse my language. It sounds like a helicopter, and it just kind of makes me, you know. So, but I'm definitely making an effort to get better with that. But I know it's gonna, with me gardening, I'm gonna attract a lot of different bugs.
This kind of goes hand in hand with a few things. I think people should acclimate themselves and start acclimating themselves to the outdoors, to being away from, or being in rural areas. I think people should get more in touch with the outdoors. And it's a gradual thing. It's not gonna happen overnight. I mean, for a lot of people, you're going to go outside and you're just going to start smacking your arms because mosquitoes, and they feel like, oh, I just want to go inside the AC, and this is just, you know, obnoxious and all that. And sometimes you do have to gradually, I mean, you know, like I said, I grew up being an outdoorsman, but I do understand, because I'm a guy that mosquitoes love, you know, and it's one of those things where I have to, for whatever reason. So, but it is true that your body, and as I'll say, going forward, with the times that are to come, it is a good idea for everyone, even when it comes to physical health. Get out, take a walk, get out in nature more, do these things. We used to say this in the military, and it was the more you sweat in peacetime, and it's the less you bleed in war. And it was always that concept of, we want everything we do to be so much harder in training than it ever actually is in warfare. Like this buddy of mine who was describing such an incident. He's like, yeah, you know, in the airborne, we ran everywhere. We would just run and run and run in training. He's like, and as soon as we got to combat, every time we could, we would find a vehicle and ride. You know, if we could get in a vehicle and go somewhere, that's how we did it, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's, you know, but at least you knew you could run, right? It's like, yeah, you could run forever, you know. So, and it's one of those things to where we do have to kind of toughen ourselves up a little bit. Yeah, and there's some realities, you know. Some people are just never going to be 100% friendly with with bugs. And when it comes to gardening, there's a lot of bugs that are obnoxious, you know, what we call not very non-beneficial insects, and then we have very beneficial insects. So
yeah, I mean, I need to get used to it though. I mean, I know I don't want to have. I go outdoors. This is one thing I love about Austin. You know, I'm originally from Los Angeles. So if you want to get outside in any nature other than the beach, you got to drive really far out of the city. But Austin, we still have a lot of the nature kind of like in the city. You don't have to drive that far out, you know, to get close to it. And it's really healing. And I've even felt, I was going to ask you this too, when you're gardening, I feel like if I'm on the computer so much, and I was trying to sift the soil to make it like less harsh, and I was out on my balcony and I had my hands in the soil, and I just felt like it was like cleansing me of like the EMFs and stuff. Do you feel that? Like being in the garden kind of like?
Yes, very much so. One, being outside is good there again because of vitamin D. You know, say for example, in America, we have a vitamin D deficiency. Most people with dark complexion, so I'm very dark complected. I have
darker than me.
Vitamin. Oh yeah, I'm darker than you, so
Yeah,
I have
you
vitamin
are?
D. Yeah. No, I'm definitely darker than you. So I take supplemental vitamin D because of that. I make sure I try to get out, but it's something. And like say for example, I think it was about 90% of COVID deaths also had a vitamin D deficiency. So
yeah,
look into that.
You need a lot of it. Yeah, but I take vitamin D too. So I know that too. And
but you know, a trick that I use also with the computer screen is I do everything I can in dark mode. Like YouTube lets you go into dark mode.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
I do. You know what else that I do? I'll put like a salt lamp a lot of times or a candle.
Okay, yeah. Now I've had a lot of people tell me about salt lamps. Do you find any benefit from it? Like just
I do. And I found it accidentally. I just happened to have one, and I had it on my desk at the same time as a computer. And I don't feel like the computer sucks me in as much.
Huh.
Kind of like, if you've seen that movie, like, what was that, Inception, where they had the little totem that they had to. Right.
It brings you back.
Yeah, I honestly feel like that's what a salt lamp or a candle does.
Huh, interesting.
So
Interesting.
Good. So if I know I have a lot of time, you know, sometimes you felt like this where you're on the computer and you know you need to get off, but you just keep on the computer.
Yeah.
It's hard to get off. It's like still kind of like you kind of like, you know. So
well, we're antennas. The brain doesn't have a firewall, right? So we're kind of we're receivers and transmitters. We don't really have a firewall. These things naturally affect us in a lot of ways. Our brains operate on specific frequencies, you know, alpha patterns, beta patterns, theta patterns, you know, all that. And our brains also have ability to do what's called frequency follow response, FFR, which means that if you pulse a specific frequency to your brain, it tends to repeat that frequency after a period of time, like say about 6 minutes for your average person. And what that is like if I just sat there and tapped the table and kept tapping the table, you know, and that was that constant like Chinese water table tap, sooner or later, or water torture tap, you're going to be like, stop that. That's annoying, right? Because your brain is either going to pick up that frequency or it's going to cause a dissonance. So, you know, a lot of times our brain are just going to follow that frequency. So any DJ knows this, right? Or, you know, you go to a club.
Hypnotherapy, right? Hypnotherapist, but look.
Yeah. Well, so movies do this. TV does this. Every score that uses violins and cello, right, to do the to build tension. When you feel that tension building up in a movie, or whatever, they're doing that with the sound, but it's just frequency. They're pulsing a specific frequency to you, and our brains respond to those frequencies. So we kind of have no firewall. So it's really good to get out in nature, you know, for these reasons. Now, you know, it's almost like when the power goes out. If anybody's been in a major city or anything, and like a power went out, or you're somewhere and all of a sudden, zoom, the power goes out, it's almost like an exhale.
Yeah,
it's like you almost feel this sense of relief when it happens.
Yeah,
it's like you're kind of scared because the power went out, but it's just like this subtle difference. It's like an exhale that you feel.
Kind of brings you back, like kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's one of those things.
Does that, honestly. I mean, you should try it. Just go get a cheap one from like Tuesday morning.
Yeah, I'll give that a shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I'm around a lot of EMF anyway. I'm an electrician by trade, and I'm a radio guy. So I'm very familiar with frequency. So there's a lot of things I've done, you know, and that's another thing we talk about is, you know, communications, ham radio, GMRS radio, things of that nature. I used to build cell phone towers. A lot of people talk about 5G, and it's kind of funny to me because I play. The frequency, maybe not necessarily 5G, meaning 5G as a technology. The technology utilizes various frequencies. Okay, so the frequency, or some of the frequencies, but the main frequencies that 5G uses or is licensed to use, they bought those frequencies from a company called Teligent. Teligent was a telecom company that existed back in the well, I guess they still kind of exist before they went bankrupt, but that's who they bought the frequencies from. I was territory construction manager and implementation manager for Teligent back in the late 90s, I believe. Period in the late 90s. So I dealt with that frequency quite. I mean, that's the frequency that we used. So I put up transceivers all over the place, broadcasting that very same frequency, which was like a 24 gigahertz frequency. Nobody said a word. Nobody complained. There was no issue about it. There was no conspiracy related to it. There was no anything per se. Now, does that mean that it's safe? Well, safe when it comes to radio frequency as far as being radiated or actually getting damaged, you know, has to do with proximity and wattage. You know, it's really what it boils down to. So they're putting these 5G towers at a lower height, and they're putting them at a higher density, meaning because of the signal doesn't penetrate as much, you need more towers and you have to have them at a lower height. That's basically what it means, because 5G doesn't have the ability to penetrate as well as the telephone that you currently have.
It's interesting because the thing that makes me nervous about it, though, is that the fact that they're doing it in stealth, and they're doing it, you know, they're putting it in the schools while the kids are out and stuff, and you know, they seem to kind of be not.
And I'm not sure that I fully accept that it's being done in stealth. And the reason why I say that is because it's been going on. It was going on. Just because the country shut down and the kids aren't in school doesn't mean that they were going to slow down their schedule of putting them in. And I say that, I say that having, I guess I can turn on my camera and show you if you want it, but I literally have 2 blueprints for 2 5G sites directly from from Verizon. Somewhere, they're on my desk somewhere, or on my, and I can grab them and show it to you and show you exactly, like, as a construction guy, what they handed me to bid on building them, right? And I can tell you that they told me then, oh, we got a really aggressive schedule. This is what we're going for. These are our numbers that we're trying to hit. It's typical telecom stuff when you're putting up towers and things of that nature. Does that mean that it's good? No, 5G is all about also bandwidth. There's an incredible amount of bandwidth. So when you talk about building the technocracy and the control grid and the, meaning, what's the best way to me say? I'm not worried about 5G being used as a weapon to fry my cells. I'm worried about 5G being used to track everything that I do and to basically be another part of the New World Order control system. That, yes, 100%. And there's going to be a 6G that does it, a 7G that does it, an 8G. They're going to keep going. As more technology they're going to get more bandwidth, and they're going to get more into our lives. And that's really what it's about, is creating that bandwidth. But as far as a weapon, and another reason why people confuse it with a weapon is because there is an active denial system that the military uses that is in the 90 megahertz range. I'm sorry, 90 gigahertz range, that also some 5G licenses were awarded in that range. So because they're in the same frequency range, people said, look, this is the same technology that the government uses for active denial systems, which are those kind of systems that they put on trucks and make your skin feel like it's burning, you know, from a football field away. Yeah, the military has that. And I can tell you that you can't take a 5G tower and turn it into one of those. It's a completely different type of system. The electronics are different. The feed horn is different. You know, an antenna that you use to communicate with isn't the same kind of antenna you use to throw waves at somebody to make their skin boil. Will one do the other if you get too close to it? Yeah, sure, but that's not what the transducer type system that these military systems use, you know, does. It's not even close to the same thing. Although they use the same frequency that some 5G was allocated when they purchased their frequencies. So it's kind of, there's a lot that goes into it. I'm not necessarily saying even that the radiation factors are safe. I would be concerned about it because they're putting the towers lower. So say, for example, when you drive by your average tower, it's a couple hundred feet up in the air, right? Yeah. But then when you drive by a 5G tower, well, it's 40 feet in the air. Well, I know that radiation is coming out. I feel safer when it's way up yonder, right, up in the air. But when it's that close and they're putting more of them, then, yeah, as far as RF pollution, we're all probably getting too much. But trust me, you're getting it from your computer screen. You're getting it from your television. You're getting it from your Wi-Fi. You're getting it from your Bluetooth. You're getting it from your smart meter. You're getting so many waves bounced at you. And to pick one and say, this one over here, I think, is the one. It's kind of like, well, yeah, but you're still sucking up a lot of RF from all kinds of sources that you can't stop right now. So it's one of those things, you know, it's kind of a weird rabbit hole. I didn't mean to detract that much from.
It's okay. I mean, I don't, you know, I haven't done the research and I can't really, you know, debate you on that, which not that I really want to, but I'm just saying.
Oh, like, yeah, and I'm not necessarily debating per se.
No,
because
you're informing. I said you're informing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I say, this is something that I've worked in. I mean, I am a licensed master electrician. Not that that means anything, but I am also a licensed ham radio operator. I am a licensed GMSR operator, and I have worked for multiple companies putting up cell phone towers, meaning in the hundreds, you know, in my life. And, you know, in the military, my first MOS in the military was in the Signal Corps fixing radar. I'm very used to the, you know, radio frequency equipment. And there are concerns. There's major, I don't think they're telling the truth. I don't think the cell phone manufacturers are telling you the truth. Here's one right there. I think your cell phone manufacturer is probably aware that your cell phone that you put to your head is probably, you know, can cause some cancer. That Bluetooth that people insist in putting in their ear, it's a radio transmitter that they're putting right next to their brain. I never use Bluetooth. I mean, you know, for that, you know what I mean? Now, granted, I'm still getting radio frequencies, but I always use a wired headset if I can when I'm talking on the phone because.
I don't do that. I usually, I don't put the phone next to my brain.
So
next to my brain. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot in it, but yeah, I would never. And the reason why I would say I'm not really trying to, or I wouldn't debate, is because there's so much I don't know. They could be a lot. You know what I mean? I don't think, like, I would never use the word safe. I'm just saying not, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah. The
You're
word
just
safe.
trying to be practical about the
exactly. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
that's fine. I mean, I appreciate that. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I just want to ask you real fast, like,
Mhm.
what are the other things that you grow in your garden?
Okay. So one thing I suggest for most people is to grow what they eat, or try to grow what they eat. So the basics are your tomatoes and your peppers, right? Everybody kind of grows those, and well, I say everybody, but your tomatoes, your peppers, your carrots, your I used to grow a lot of potatoes, but now diet wise, I don't. Just because I'm avoiding the starches. We grow broccoli, kohlrabi.
Did you even grow sweet potatoes?
I grew a lot of sweet potatoes, and yet they are a lot better for me dietarily wise, the sweet potato as opposed to anything else. I just, this year I just didn't do it because I can't, it's one of those things. I just didn't grow a lot of them. And, it's funny, the last time I grew a big batch of sweet potatoes, I had voles, which are these little tiny mouse type burrowing creatures that ate almost half of them. And it was very frustrating. Yeah, like these
mouse type?
Yeah, it's called a vole, but VOLE, but it's like a little mouse, without a tail. And so sometimes these are just typical pests and predators that you get. But yeah, sweet potatoes, I think the next time I do it, I'm going to do it in a container. That's a really good way of doing it, because when I just do them in mounds in the ground, some of the predators get to them. So, and it usually, it only happened after about 3 or 4 years of doing it. Had great crop, and then it seemed like the animals figured out, hey, this is the house. And then once they came, the sweet potatoes were just, so I think when I start them back up, if I do decide to grow some, it'll be in a container. And they're very easy to grow. And another good thing is a lot of people have sweet potato plants in their house, right? So sweet potatoes are the kind of thing that if you go to the store, you buy an organic sweet potato, and over a period of time, it'll start sprouting if you don't use it real quickly.
Yeah.
Well, that's all you need. That's it. There you go.
Yeah,
plant that. Yeah, plant. Yeah. So sweet potato is the kind of thing you can overwinter. You can always have some, and once you buy it, you can always have some. So I have plenty of sweet potato, let's say, just growing in containers around the house that my wife has, a plant. So we'll start them back up.
You can have onions too, right? You can grow onions like that. You can grow ginger like that as well, right?
Correct. There's a lot of things, especially things that grow underground like that,
Like
that you can,
grow them in containers, like carrots and
most definitely. Just about everything you can grow in container. You just have to have a decent size container, or the right size container.
Like a 5 gallon, would you say, is a good?
Oh yeah, 5 gallon buckets are perfect. I tell you something we use a lot of. Anyone that has a cat, and if you ever get those 5 gallon, those buckets of kitty litter. I don't know, for whatever reason, it's what my wife uses, these buckets of kitty litter, but we've been doing it for so long that they're kind of a bucket that we use for everything. One thing about being in the city is that you get good city waste. So I had a friend for a while, a bass player in the band I was in. He worked at a hotel, and in their restaurant, he would just get food grade buckets. It would be a bucket of relish or a bucket of pickles or whatever. But once they emptied it out, he would just bring me buckets and buckets of food grade buckets, that were, the right kind of plastic and all of that, and free of charge, So one good thing about living close to the city, on the outskirts of a city, that there are products that you can get. For example, breweries, microbreweries, when those things sprung up all over the place, they would always get rid of their used grains. They would have to do something with it. And there would be nothing wrong with the grain after they went through the whole fermentation and, process that they would go to. So typically you could back up your truck and fill it up and take it back, and your chickens would just have a field day with it. So, so back to growing, what we grow. Wow, I'm trying to think. There's, okay, so I'll break this down. There's annual plants, and annual plants are plants that you plant every year. They have a full cycle, and then you harvest them. And then they typically die. And then what we have what's called perennial plants. And perennial plants are things that come back every year, right? So depending on where you live, what zone you live in, and these are primarily things like your berries and your fruits, so there's some systems we have that once you put them in place, it may take a year or two for them to produce, like goji berry. We now have all kinds of goji berries growing all over the place, but it took maybe 2 or 3 years for that really to get started, but they come back every year. Fruit trees. It took maybe 3 years for the fruit trees to produce on average. But you can get, and like say, you know, there again, Walmart, cheap fruit trees, Walmart or Kmart or, you know, a lot of those guys towards the end of the season too, Tractor Supply, whatever, they have stuff that they aren't going to sell. They'll just get rid of it, make a deal on it, you know, oftentimes at reduced pricing or what have you. You don't really have much to lose. I urge anybody, when you move into a house or you get a piece of property, if you can, plant a fruit tree. It's going to take a few years for that to pan out, but you'll be really, really glad when it does, right?
The fruit trees that you can get though, like at like Home Depot, and they already have some fruit. They're small, but how about those, right?
And that's what I mean. Home Depot. That's another great source of things like that.
It takes a long time to get.
Well, sometimes those things, a lot of those trees are grafts, and what that means is that they took another tree and then they grafted on the fruit tree portion so that it would kind of be hardier and grow a little bit faster and already have a root system. In the shock process that they're going through, sometimes they'll throw out fruit and all of that. That's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of people just pull that fruit off because they knew the tree is prematurely producing that anyway. So, you know, why waste the effort or whatever? Sometimes you'll find trees like that have a few vegetable or fruit on them, but it still takes those things really a few years before they truly start producing for you. That's just kind of something that they go through shock and do, if you will.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And then there are rules like the lady under me, she has like a jungle under me. She has a really good green thumb. And she also has a lime tree. And then I was talking to the lady at the garden store again, and she was saying that Texas, I guess, has a restriction that they can't let any citrus trees have to be grown internally. They can't have any, because there's a certain bug that they're trying to keep out.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and everybody, and another good thing to do is to just, everybody lives in a different area, wherever part of the country in which you live. Like there's things that you can do. You're in Texas. I'm in Indiana. So there's, we're in completely different zones. There's things, different times of the year that we can grow different things. A lot of complaints that I hear from people that I know in Texas is that they don't have a true 4 seasons like we do. So some of the cool weather stuff, you know, they have a very short time to grow it, like your broccolis and your a lot of your salad vegetables that they like cooler weather.
I like kale. I've been waiting. I got my kale seeds.
Exactly.
About to plant them this week. I'm down. I'm down.
So, and there again, what you'll find is that you may have an area on your balcony that's just heavily shaded and just doesn't get the same sun that someplace. Well, that may be your kale spot, right? But then you may have this other area that gets, so we call those microclimates. And as you get to know your property, you'll realize that it's not the same everywhere on your property. You have this back corner. It's like, man, I never get any light back here. Okay, well then let's start looking up what kind of things grow in low light, right? That's the attitude we have to take. Then experiment. Seed is cheap. I'll say it again for right now. It's probably going to go up. It's probably going to go up. But for relatively, for what you get out of it, seed is cheap. That means, you know, experiment. I'll tell you, I make a lot of mistakes, and I don't even know if I consider them mistakes at this point. Some things pan out, some things don't pan out. One of the things I learned was a lot of people ask me, can I do this or can I do that or can I do whatever? And I'll just say, you know what, give it a shot. If I'm not sure, but I know that you can try. And if it doesn't work out, there's next year. Another thing I would say about gardening in general and doing things for yourself like this, when you start studying this stuff, it's depressing. When you start getting into what the controllers of the world are doing, you can go into a spiral of depression. And some people, when you try to talk to, they're like, oh, that's depressing. And you can tell they don't want to talk about it when you try to wake them up to certain things. There is nothing. And the problem is when you start growing food, it's not depressing anymore. Like, because you're doing something. And it kind of works in a bad way because I can talk about some pretty heinous stuff now and it doesn't depress me because I have my avenues that I'm providing for myself and it makes me feel good. It also, there's nothing that makes a man, and I'll say, you know, I'm kind of, or a person look toward the future more than planting something. Planting a tree knowing that the following year, all kinds of things can happen. But man, there's nothing like looking forward to growing season, looking forward to how things come out.
That's a metaphor for life.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
If you have something to look forward to, then the future looks bright. Especially, you know, with all this going on too. My friend and I were talking about. I've had 2 of my friends' kids try to commit suicide, and they're teenagers, right? And they don't know anything about life. They're young, you know, and it's like, you know, if they in their mind, they don't have anything to look forward to, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's just one of the worst things that I see being done to the youth today is telling them how bad America is and how bad. I mean, I can imagine they're so impressionable that many of them feel like they have to go out and, you know, make a stink because there's nothing to look forward to. And I'm thinking, oh, you have so much to look forward to, you know. There is, now granted, tough times ahead, you better believe they are, right? But I'd rather have tough times right here in America than, you know, a lot of other places where I've been, at least.
We're still in the best places ever, for sure.
Yeah. So, you know, but you look forward to, it's very, like I said, it's you have a future to look forward to when you start playing things. Your outlook on life just greatly improves. And it's also because you are actually giving yourself reasons to, meaning your self-esteem goes up because you're accomplishing things, right? That's just the way it works in life. A lot of people are like, oh, this, you know, I don't feel good about myself if I'm not accomplishing something. People say, oh, you shouldn't beat yourself up. And I get all of that. But, you know, there's times where I had to beat myself up. I'm just going to tell you. I had to look at, you know.
Like I'm having more, even just with herbs, I'm just like, oh, like I want to go to Surburban. I didn't tend to it well and it died. And I get depressed. I'm like, oh my God, you know, I can't keep anything alive except aloe vera. Like, what am I, you know, but I'm making an effort, and the better
I get that. It can be frustrating, especially because I do hear people that a lot with houseplants. For whatever reason, that seems to affect people more when they kill a pretty houseplant. You know what I mean? At least, you know, my wife would get like that. You know, she'd have a lot more concern about some houseplant than you know, a vegetable. But it's one of those things where you just kind of have to. One, everybody finds their niche, so you just kind of have to try things and see what you like. So, you know, that works as well, because it's the concept that I like the idea of a diversity of things that I grow. I try to have systems so that when one thing isn't producing, another thing is, right? You know, the growing season is only so long outdoors, so I need other things going on. But by the same concept, it's good to understand that there are some things that I can do better than a lot of people, and other things may just be mediocre. So in that aspect, I can then branch out to those other people and have some trade, have some things going on, because, okay, I can't do it all, or I'm not good at growing this, or I'm not good at growing whatever. But as you build that community, or at least, you know, you start finding your niche and what you can produce or what you're good at growing, you'll find that, you know, somebody else is not, and you can start to at least develop a relationship based off of that. Yeah. So, you know, it's important just not to get discouraged and to keep going. On another front, even beyond the idea of growing, I would highly urge most people just to just keep in mind the aspect of self-reliance, period. So if that does not necessarily mean growing food for you in your situation right now, it should most certainly mean maybe storing a little bit more food. It should most certainly mean developing ways to, let's say, find water or filter your water, right? Investing into that, making sure that you have the security that you need to make you feel better. I highly advise everybody to be armed. A homestead should be armed, you know, in my view. So
I'm gonna get a Berkey, hopefully. Soon.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I have some pretty good water filters, but I heard Berkey's really good. So
and I've gone through quite a few, and at the end of the day, Berkey is where I landed. I really like the system. The really good part about the system is that it's gravity fed, which means you don't need water pressure. Yeah. So by default, you can just take water and pour it into it, and the gravity just kind of, you know, so it's not like some of the type of systems where you have to hook it up to your water pipes, this and that. And which also makes it portable, which is a good thing. Berkeys can be cleaned. The black filters ultimately are a physical filter so they can be cleaned. I run fluoride filters on mine as well, which do have to be replaced after a certain period of time. But you can actually scrub the black filters to kind of keep those clean. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the Berkey, and also keeping in mind that if that you know, the ability to boil water, the ability without power, if you need to, you know, those things kind of matter as well, because you also keep in mind that, of course, you need water to drink, but you also need water for sanitation. So a lot of big issues that occur are sanitation issues. And there we go back again to control. So the controllers have control over us, because if there is an emergency situation, or they just decide to play jump ball come this election, which it kind of they're pointing to the fact that they're just going to say, yeah, you're not going to find out who president is until maybe January, February, and in between that time, we don't know who's going to be in charge, and it'll just be kind of crazy. That's the, you know, the big fear.
It could be Trump, but I mean,
yes, but there's a lot of barriers, if you will, that to prevent, you know, so who knows what may happen with that. I certainly hope it remains non-volatile, but it kind of looks like it won't be, and it will be a volatile situation. So these are just kind of things to think about, is as far as your ability to have self-reliance, but it also really goes into knowing, or at least having some kind of relationship with your neighbors. But yeah, we go through the Berkey water filter is a good thing to have, but also keep in mind that you may have to, you don't necessarily need drinkable water for sanitation, but you still may need to at least be able to heat it up, right? So if we have to go through periods of time without that, without these resources, or at least without public utilities, if you will, if those things become compromised, for your own self-reliance, it's a good idea to keep these things in mind as well. So, you know, we kind of, I know for not everybody, it's something they can just rush right out and do, but people should start really thinking about making their home work for them. And, you know, the time's coming ahead. Say again?
I didn't mean to cut you up, but I wanted to say just anything you can do little by little.
Yeah,
That's the thing too. I think it gets so overwhelming for people, because they're just like, oh, I gotta do all this stuff, I gotta move it. Okay, well, maybe just get a filter this month, right? Next month, start growing some herbs, you know. Next month, you know, whatever you can, just do whatever you can.
Yeah, because a lot of these things aren't necessarily based. I mentioned the end of this year. The end of this year may go fine. I'm just projecting a future for America, right? So, and in these times, we want to gradually get there. If you're not there, I mean, you know, it's a gradual thing. You have to be comfortable with it. But I would just urge people to start. I've always had this, like, I had an idea at one point. I used to like zombie movies. And
you said zombie movies?
Yeah, I was a big fan of zombie movies. And I wanted to make a zombie movie in which it was the idea in which, in this zombie movie, people knew what zombies were. Because sometimes you see a zombie movie and it takes them halfway through the movie before they're really dead. Oh my goodness, they're dead. They're actually dead, right? So in my zombie movie, right? But you know, that's kind of like the par for the course for these zombie movies. My zombie movie would be based off of the fact that America's been watching zombie movies for 20 years. So when the zombie apocalypse happened, everybody knows exactly what it is. They know exactly how to kill zombies, and it's pretty much a non-event. In fact, it gets so bad that people are fighting over who gets to kill the zombie. So there'll be like a zombie reporting, and 20 people come running at it, and like everybody shoots it. It's like, no fair, I got it first, you know, because at this point, there is no apocalypse. Yeah, there'll be old, like, grandmas, you know what I mean, trying to get their zombies.
What if they're zombies because they're lacking certain vitamins?
Yeah, well, yeah, there we go.
Huh?
But it's like, well, my image, or that I would love to see for America, is that kind of situation happen with a lot of things, to where if there was a disaster and, you know, the National Guard comes rolling through, you're able to say, no, we're good to go. We got water. We got food. You guys want anything? You guys hungry? You know, you want something to eat? Yeah. No, we don't need anything. We're good to go. We're good to go. Hey, here, take this water and food to the next neighborhood. Maybe they need something, right?
Yeah,
but there is no zombie apocalypse, because people know how to take care of themselves.
Be like God.
Yeah, and that's really what, because the zombie apocalypse only occurs because we are dependent, and I'm using it as a metaphor.
You're exactly
But it only occurs because they will have that over us. Now, I know everybody's in different financial situations. A lot of different things are going on. Everybody has different abilities than everybody else. I would just highly urge that freedom for us ultimately means the ability to handle certain things within our communities. A lot of people don't want police. Okay, but here's the way it works. If you don't want police, a lot more you're going to have to carry guns, because the other element ain't going away. Right? Exactly. What you don't want the government to do, then you must do yourself. That's pretty much the way it works. Exactly. So if we can develop more of the skill set to take back over the things that our forefathers thought we would never let the government do. There's certain things that our forefathers thought, well, no. These are things that we handle, or we handle in our community, or we handle in our church, or we handle in our community group, or what have you. But these are not necessarily things, because they understood the harm or the damage that these things can do. And it also boiled down to growing food, understanding that, I've always had a hard time with when take this how you want, but when a group of parents releases their daughter into the world and give them a car, but don't teach them how to change a tire. In my opinion, I'm just kidding. No. But no, yeah. Well, no, here's what I mean. Well, see, and here's where it works. If you release your daughter into the world in a car, you buy her a Sweet 16, and she doesn't know how to change a tire. All you've done is make her subject to some other dude who's going to do it for her, right? So if she's on the side of the road.
My dad actually taught me how to change a tire. At least.
Amen. Awesome.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, because you're making her dependent. You're making her vulnerable.
Exactly. Yeah. Instead of you now she's empowered. She's knowledgeable. She's empowered. In fact, if a guy wants to talk to her, that guy better at least know how to change a tire. It's going to be awful. She's not going to look at that guy as, you know what I mean? She may, I don't know. But, I guess the point of it is that the more she knows, the higher the game of the guy that steps to her has to be, because he's got to compare skill level. It's like, well, I can do that myself. I don't really need you for that. So you're going to have to come a little bit stronger, right? It's like, whoa, okay.
And, I want to say, though, it's funny because there's this meme that has like this hipster dude that has a beard. And it's like, if you look like this, but you don't know how to change a tire, then you should shave.
Yeah, and I used to teach trades, and that's one issue that, we're at a time where we don't have a lot of tradesmen. There's just a lot of knowledge that just isn't out there. Yeah. And it's a difficult situation. Like I'm a master electrician. It's great time for me right now. I pick and choose my jobs, do what I want, because there's not a lot of us, and there's, it's just a really, really good time. And most of us, when we retire, there's not enough people to replace us. So if anybody's looking for a career, I would tell you, hands down, right off the bat, get into anything dealing with technology, but specifically electrical work, at least where I am, you can write your own ticket, because there's not enough people to do it. And when I've taught at various institutions, I taught at Brightwood College that shut down long ago, but also at Lincoln Tech. And the biggest issue I had personally was, I would get these kids that didn't know, when I say kids, from 18 on up to 50 at times. And it was amazing to me how much was lost on that generation of not knowing basic things, teaching them how to read a tape measure. And I'm thinking, I don't remember not knowing how to read a tape measure. Like I literally don't remember what it was like. I was thinking myself, well, my dad had all kinds of stuff laying around, and typically I'd play with it and mess around with it. I don't remember what it was like not knowing. I think first grade, I don't know. I always knew how to read a tape measure. But it's the knowledge differential when you're teaching somebody who's 30 years old how to read a tape measure. And then typically they look like us, meaning the biggest problem is in the inner city, because most of them were raised by women, ultimately, or raised by their moms. Yeah. And I tell you, the knowledge differential is night and day. Because the kids who came from a rural background, well, they knew tools, they knew this and that, and they were able to excel just like, nobody's business. But when you had to start from that basis of these kids are raised in a situation where they don't even understand much about the world in which they live, much less the natural world around them and how things work, the mechanical world around them. So it's kind of a disservice that we've done to a degree to ourselves, because we've taken that out of, you know, one way, just trying to create the feral human being again, trying to create that, you know, just the aspect of where we have an improved skill set, and we're doing more than ourselves. I know I sound like a broken record when I say that, but
yeah. Well, I mean, this is a great talk. Is there anything else you want to say to wrap it up?
No, yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for having me. I've always enjoyed your channel. And I guess what I really like about it is just kind of like the realness, you know. It's just kind of like, let's just talk about what, you know, what is going on from a very real level. I don't know. It's just kind of, you know, how there's a lot today in the truth community that seems just very pretentious, if you will.
Yeah, they don't go down. They don't go down too deep. Like, I'll just be like, okay, well, your soil's messed up because they're spraying chemtrails on it. Let's talk about that.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
they're just like, I don't know. I can't figure out why the soil is something wrong with the soil. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like they only take it so far. And I'm like, that's not the problem, dude. Like, this is the problem. Like, do you want to solve the problem? We can't solve the problem unless you really talk about the real issue.
Well, yeah, and that's this kind of thing we were, and unfortunately, there's so many different issues and so many different angles, and you know, personalities as well. So it's just one of those things. That's why I'm more or less like I said, I invite everybody to kind of check out the channel. There's not really, yeah, it's Suburban Homestead Outfitters, which is just a YouTube channel, and it's just as it sounds, Suburban Homestead Outfitters. The whole concept is just to show, and it's more or less just documentation of what we're doing on our homestead, which is your typical suburban homestead lot. Most guys are on 1/10 of an acre to 1/3 of an acre, which is what most people have. Some of it can translate also down to apartments, you know, if you will, because even with our lot, if you were to drive by our house, our front yard isn't dug up or planted or anything of that nature. So it still looks like your typical suburban lot from the front. Everything that we do is pretty much behind the fence, you know, in the back. So and for some people that's a concern too, you know, if you do have an HOA, or you definitely want to keep your curb appeal and things of that nature. But the basic premise is of us doing what we can to make our home work for us, producing as much as we can. If all of us did 10%, then that would be something. And I'll give you an example. 30 years ago, and this is kind of an example that worked for and against us, but let's just think of it like this. Once everybody started to make a big deal about organic food, then Kroger, Whole Foods, all of these other big companies opened up. Why? Because they knew that it was something. They knew that people had a concern. They knew that it was a buzzword and that it was real. But what they also knew was that if they could add convenience, then they could capture the market. They knew that if they could say, well, look, no, you don't have to grow your own food. No, none of that. We got a little sticker we're going to put on this, and this lets you know, and we're going to charge more for it, and this lets you know that it was all cool and cage, you know, whatever buzzword you want, we're going to use, and that way we take a slice of that market instead of it going to the small provider locally who could do for you, or you know, making you do more so for yourself. So that's kind of the world we're in. So yeah, yes, there are opportunities for people to buy better food. Yeah, of course. Now we have a whole market for it from the big guys, but you're still just giving the big corporations that money. So it's really important for us to do as much as we can. And as you do, I promise you, you will start, you start to grow one thing, you get good at it. Next thing you know, you're going to think, hey, you put that on your plate. But let's say the 4 other things on your plate were things that you bought, but you feel really good because you're like, man, I put this one thing on my plate. Stick to it, because next thing you know, you're going to have a plate sitting in front of you with 4 things on it, and all 4 things on that plate came from you, from your backyard.
I've been eating off the salmon that I made this morning, and I used oregano and rosemary on it. that I got.
Awesome.
From
Tastes better, doesn't it, too? It's like,
it
yeah.
I mean, it's like life.
Yeah. And it's, it's like, I don't know whether it's, of course, some of it may be mental, because I can do that with my eggs. I'm sure that, I don't, like, in my opinion, everything that I grow tastes better than everything else anyway. Some of it is just a little bit of pride.
The love that's put into it. You're eating the love, the attention,
Exactly. So yeah, that's pretty much how I would leave you off. Thank you very much for having me. I know I can get long-winded, but I really appreciate the opportunity.
I'm sorry it took me so long to have you on, because I kept saying I was going to, and I just forgot.
Oh no, it's all good. I mean, like I said, I don't really what I do is kind of more or less just a very lazy documentation. So it's nothing really nothing really fancy.
Stuff from it. So check his channel out, Rec from Suburban Homestead Outfitters. Thank you so much. I will talk to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
No hang up just yet, but I'm gonna stop the recording. All right, guys. Talk to you later. Bye bye.